Now let's get the read on all of this with the Independent Women's Forum Director of Policy, Hadley Heath Manning, Washington Examiner commentary writer Emily Jashinsky. Emily, I do want to get in the memo stuff and all that because obviously everyone is uncles, fascinated with that. But I'm wondering about how this administration handles this market stuff, because whatever they think about the other news organizations not paying attention to the markets on the way up, they certainly are now on the way down. How do they handle that? Should they handle it? What do they do?
You know, I expect what's going to happen is they're going to be a lot more quiet about the markets if the trend continues. You know, they're just going to stop talking about it as much as they did in the past. I think it's interesting. We saw their strategy today, at least, was to say, hey, let's try to see the forest for the trees. Let's take a big picture look after, you know, on daily occasions touting the daily increases. But I think what we'll see if this trend continues is just less talk about the market from the White House.
You know, other presidents who've had whipsawing markets, Ronald Reagan comes to mind, Bill Clinton comes to mind, Hadley. They talked in terms not so much about the markets, but more specifically about jobs, the underlying economy, economic growth, consumer spending, all of that, and didn't align themselves too much to the markets. They point out, as Ronald Reagan did after 8 years, even after the '87 stock market crash, where he shrugged his shoulders and said, our market's higher now than when I took office. Yeah, they doubled. So, but that's where they left it. So what if the markets rebound from this and Donald Trump is tempted to once again start quoting them a lot? What then?
I think this experience this past week is a good reminder that the stock market is not the economy. Ultimately, Ronald Reagan would have asked people, are you better off than you were 4 short years ago? That was the question that he put before the American people. And for some Americans, yes, when the stock market does well, they do well, and they can answer that question positively. I am better off, and we should all root for the stock market to do well. The stock market is not the economy, but it's also not the enemy of the economy. It's not the enemy of working people. We want to celebrate when wages are going up and celebrate when our labor market is strong. Those are certainly indicators that look good today. But we should also root for the stock market to continue to prosper because that affects millions of Americans, not just those who invest, but those who have any type of retirement account or who depend on charitable endowments to do well. So I believe the president can continue to tout a strong stock market if that continues to be the case. But ultimately, that's not the most important element of our economy, and we want to make sure the fundamentals are strong as well.
Indeed, the economic fundamentals, I don't care if you like the president, dislike the president any more than if you liked Bill Clinton or disliked Bill Clinton. In the case of serious downdrafts in both of their markets at different periods, the economic fundamentals were sound, Emily. Now there's a debate back and forth as to whether the tax cuts are going to make them more sound. Obviously, a number of financial firms are upping their predictions for growth in the economy later this year precisely because of those cuts. Charlie Gasparino was here raising the possibility that they've been too generous in those estimates, and that's one of the things roiling the markets. I disagree with him on that, but what do you make of that?
Well, I think this is all gets to the issue of why it's problematic, or maybe not problematic, but why it's a risk for presidents to sort of, even if it's implicit, to take credit for market swings. You know, that's where it gets really tough on a political level for a president to step in and make that implication or make that even explicit, because this is going to happen. Historically, we see how this happens. We've seen how this plays out. And so the Trump White House is going to have to grapple with that in the coming days.
You know, we also have dysfunction continuing in Washington, Hadley, and the inability to come to an accord apparently on DACA. We might get, you know, an extension to keep the government operating with another one of these CRs. But that progress on immigration might be a year or more away. What do you think of that?
Well, partisanship reigns very strong in today's Washington. That's the case with policy issues like immigration. It's a case with, unfortunately, our discovery process as we, the public, learn more about the Nunes memo and potentially another memo as we continue to look into the Russia investigation. So ultimately, our hope as the American people should be that our leaders can put good, sound policy ahead of the politics here and really work to protect not just the integrity of our borders, but also the integrity of our law enforcement agencies. That's something that Congress is charged to do, regardless of the D or the R after your name.
I like that. You know what? I really like that. Ladies, thank you both.